Welcome to Liberty FM, the podcast dedicated to all things New York Liberty. I'm Felicia, and I'm joined by my co-host, Francois. We're recapping this weekend's matchup between the Liberty and the Las Vegas Aces. Coming off of a historic Olympic performance with Team USA, you wonder how some of the athletes returning to their teams were going to handle such a short transition. For the Liberty, there's probably fatigue, but they've pushed through to win 2 games to start the second half of this season. Francois, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. And it felt like they were back like they never left, right?
Right.
We were really wondering how, especially our Olympians, were going to come back and play 4 days after the end of the Olympics. And it was an offensive galore against the LA Sparks. Now, granted that the LA Sparks are not the best team in the league, but regardless, you still have to come out and play. And oh boy, what a performance by the Liberty offensively. And I don't know if they got to read some of the ESPN projections for the rest of the season. Because at the moment, one of the projections of ESPN is that there's going to be a big upset in the first round, and that they project the Aces and the Minnesota Lynx to be in the final, with little regards to the New York Liberty. And on another post, they had the audacity to say that, Stewie getting closer to 30, it might be the first sign of decline from Stewie. And I think that most of us as Liberty fans took that personally, and probably Stewie took it personally as well, because she played like she played during the Olympics. She had an incredible game against the Sparks with 27 points, 3 for 4 at the 3-point line, which has been a struggle this year. And I like that the Liberty social media account posted after that, aging like fine wine, right? And so it was a great performance by the Liberty against a Sparks team that really struggled defensively. But the contribution from every single player, even the bench players, got to play.
Yeah.
I think we couldn't have expected better than this start after that Olympic break. What did you make of the performance against the Sparks?
I mean, they were dominant. That's what you want, especially against a team like LA. You can't just go by the fact of, where they are in the standings and think that you're just going to come in and get an easy win. But I do like the fact that the Liberty came to play and they played hard like they always do. You wonder if, some fatigue may be there, especially for, Stewie and Sabrina, just coming off of such a short, they only had a couple of days from flying from Paris and getting ready to be with the team. So it was just a really statement win, especially for Stewie, with all the projections and all the nonsense that...
the disrespect, pretty much.
It was disrespectful, especially with the fact that the Liberty are holding on to the number 1 spot in the league right now, and everyone else is fighting it out. And for the Liberty, yes, obviously they know that there are things that they still have to work on as the season progresses, but they have shown that they deserve that top spot. They have shown that they are the ones to beat this season. And for even ESPN to project the Aces and Minnesota, obviously they are great teams. They're one of the top teams out there, but the Liberty should be in the mix. They should at least be mentioned. They are number 1. That's just, to me, disrespectful. And disrespectful also to Stewie to claim that she's starting to age out. Like, do you say that about NBA players who are turning 30?
Yeah,
no, probably not.
Especially considering that the top 3 players of the U.S. men's team were Steph Curry, Kevin Durant,
and
LeBron James, who are in their mid to late 30s. And you don't hear any comments about them on the decline. It's always a double standard. But I'm glad that the Liberty prove a point. But obviously the focus was on the Saturday game, the big matchup against the defending champ, the Las Vegas Aces, who are struggling this season. They had their ups and downs. They were able to kind of be on the come up once Chelsea Gray came back into the team, but they're still kind of looking for that spark from last season.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, after a traumatizing final last year, we know that those matchups are, a way, how would I say that? A statement, if you win against a team like this, like you show to the rest of the league and fans that, us being top of the league is not a fluke, that, we deserve to be where we are. And so I think it was very important for the Liberty to really have a strong performance against the defending champ. And the defending champ, that was their first game of,
Yeah, they had a longer break.
They had the whole week after the Olympics to kind of prepare for the game. So I was kind of worried about that, whether it was going to be an advantage or not for the Aces. And we saw at the start of the game, a little flashback from last year, specifically the home games that, the Aces had against the Liberty in the WNBA final last year, where they destroyed the Liberty pretty much, in those home games in Vegas. And you felt like once they got things going and started shooting threes, that it was really hard to stop them. And that first quarter was, sort of like a flashback. I think they started the game with, five. They were 5 for 5 at the 3-point line. And I think Stewie, after the game, when she was asked about, the start of the game and how they were able to turn things around, she mentioned the fact that, they were often late on defense, over helping, sort of like double teaming someone that leaves someone else's open for a free. For me, what was really striking was the fact that quite often they would go under the screen. And when you have players like Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, to some degree, Alicia Clark, that can shoot threes, if you go under the screen, they're going to make you pay. So I was a little worried, especially with the fact that, it was a high tempo, which kind of favors the Aces as well. So I was a little worried. How did you see that first quarter and what the Liberty could have done a little bit better in that first quarter?
Yeah, they seemed a bit complacent. I think even when you saw Asia make a three, you're
I forgot about Asia, who had a free in the game.
This is not gonna go well if you're leaving her open and she's scoring threes. So yeah, you get a little nervous at first because everything's going in for them, and yeah, the Liberty didn't seem quick. The Aces kept up the pace. They kept that going, and that's really their bread and butter, to keep the ball popping, like they always say, and keep it moving. And you just have excellent shooters on that team. And so anyone, 1 through 5, they're dangerous, and so you can't just relax. You can't be complacent. You have to play and try to take control, because the Liberty can speed things up at times too, but that's not really their main thing all the time. And for the Aces, that's their thing. They kept the game sped up for the Liberty, and that just made things uncomfortable for everybody. I think even for Jonquel, and looking at Jonquel, even in that first part of the first half, she quickly picked up 2 fouls. And so that's tough, because that's your main person under there with Asia. Like, out of anyone else, like, JJ is your main person and you need her under there. So picking up those quick fouls, you could tell she was immediately frustrated. And when JJ gets frustrated, if it starts getting into her head, we all know how JJ can play sometimes when she's frustrated, and it's just got, she had to go to the bench. It's just getting her to kind of reset, calm down. But Niara came in, and I think once they kind of try to slow things down a bit after the first quarter, they came back in the second quarter and they didn't panic. They played smarter. They got back to their principles. They got back to defending, and they have some great defenders on the court. I think Phoebish, initially might have been, taken a little off guard there, just getting used to just being back with a team that is, like the Aces, that can be more aggressive and in your face, and she even took some hits from a couple of people on the court throughout the game, but I think they adjusted well, and I think they did a good job coming into the second quarter. And I think, what did they keep them to, just 8 points?
8 points in the second quarter. I think at some point between the end of the first and the second quarter, I don't know if it was like a 22 run or something like that. But that was very impressive. And I think that's actually the difference, I would say, with last year. The Liberty mental strength compared to last season. Last season, if they had, faced a moment like this, I felt like they would have crumbled. But there's like this sort of inner strength with this team this year, the sense that, they can weather the storm and kind of get back to what they know how to do. And I was very impressed by how they quickly, turn things around. And it started with Sabrina Ionescu. I mean, everybody's saying that the MVP race is over, that the title is going to go to A'ja Wilson. She has, incredible stats. Don't get me wrong. But I think, we said that many, many times before on our podcast, that you have to mention players like Nafisa Collier and Sabrina Ionescu in the mix, because I feel like Sabrina has been the most consistent leader on that team. We have, obviously, Breanna Stewart, Jonquel Jones, but I feel like Sabrina has been the player that we could count on at any moment. In that second quarter, I mean, she did everything. Like, she had 2 incredible threes, including one that is very unusual for her, where she kind of had this sort of she had like a cross and then like a step back on the left side, a little bit like Caitlin Clark, and it was incredible. And then she had another one towards the end of the first quarter where she was very far from the line. And then now, obviously, what she had this year is a mid-range floater. But even defensively, I felt like she was not ridiculous. Like she remember how they targeted her last year. And this year I felt like, she's not like, the best defender, but you can't like beat her as easily as you used to last year. And that's a huge difference for the Liberty.
Yeah, she stepped up her game tremendously this year. She worked on the things that she knew she was weaker in. And she's coming out and showing that the things that she's working on, that she put so much effort in, is, paying dividends for her. That floater, it's hard to stop. I mean, she did it in front of A'ja a couple times, and defensively too. Like, great shooters aren't necessarily the best defenders. Like, typically across the league, like, they're not necessarily, unless they're like, like Stewie, but she has the length. Yeah. Like, Stewie has the arm length. She can reach you pretty quickly. For a guard, it's harder, and so Sabrina is working on her game, and she's working on improving her game every season, and you see that with each season. So I do believe, like, she's going to be a better defender. She's going to get quicker. She's already gotten a little bit quicker. And I think that's just, the sky's the limit for her. And I do think that if you don't have Sabrina on your team for the Liberty, it's going to be a tough season. Like, yes, you have Stewie, you have JJ, but you need somebody to run that offense as well. Because I'm sorry, as much as I love Sloot, for this game,
it was not necessarily a good match.
This was not a good matchup for Sloot. Like, she did well with LA. I think there are certain teams that you can insert her in, and yes, she's a starter, and I know Sandy is gonna probably keep using her in that role. And I know people say like she should come from the bench. I don't see Sandy. If she does that, that would be a surprise to me. But I don't see Sandy having her come from the bench. I think she'll start a game and maybe get pulled out partway through the first quarter. But this was not the game for her, because at the speed that the Las Vegas Aces play at, she just couldn't keep up. And the only people you're on, Kelsey Plum, Chelsea Gray, or Jackie Young, like, I just, this wasn't for her.
Yeah, I think, I don't have necessarily a problem with Sloot starting the game, because it's actually probably a good thing for her to get into rhythm. But I think Sandy at times waited a little too long to make those
Yeah, to make this
substitutions
change. Yeah.
when she saw like numerous times that she was struggling on defense. You should have like put her on the bench much quicker. And when you have like people like Kayla Foran,
Yeah.
Leonie Fibish that are tall players and very versatile and defend on different players, I think that you should have seen that maybe this is not the game for Sloot, and that's okay. She had a decent performance against the Sparks, but maybe for that matchup, it's just not for her. So at some point, I was a little worried that the Aces might have made us pay for that, but that's the difference I would say also with last year. The roster last year was very unbalanced. We had a lot of centers. You had Anshu that barely had any playing time. You had Sabali, it was the first year in the league. You had Dawson, who was injured for a long time and kind of struggled to find her rhythm after that ankle injury. So you didn't really have like a roster and players coming from the bench that could really complement the starting lineup and can help on defense against players like Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, Chelsea Gray. And so you had to rely a lot on the starters. You had to rely a lot on Stewie scoring a lot of points. And so you could tell that, yes, we had a strong starting lineup, but the starting lineup of the Aces last year was better. Now, they still kind of struggle with their bench and the rotation, the Aces. But the difference this year is that, their starting lineup is not performing as well as they used to. Asia is phenomenal, but the rest, Jackie Young has been inconsistent. Kelsey Plum has been inconsistent. Chelsea Gray, you feel like she hasn't really found her rhythm just yet. You could tell she's a little slower. She's not fully healthy just yet. But you gotta give props to that roster that Jonathan Cobbs, the general manager of the Liberty, built again this year. A lot of people had doubts about the roster, but when you see the contribution of Kayla Foran, Phoebish, even Kennedy Burke, who's stealing a lot of balls and could shoot threes or attack the basket, that really is gonna help the Liberty in the long run. And I think with those players, we have a good chance. I think this is the year. This year, let's not kid ourselves. This is now or never. It's probably the best chance that the Liberty have to win a title. And if those players continue to contribute the way they've been doing, we have a good chance.
Yeah, I totally agreed. I think the Liberty, this is their time. It's now or never because the league is not getting weaker.
Yeah.
It's only getting stronger. Each rookie class that comes in and each change and trade and people you sign, whether it's, here within the States or overseas, a lot of people during the Olympics, they got a lot of looks at various players from different countries playing for their country. And, they are very well interested in those players as well. So you can't, it's all or nothing right now for the Liberty. I'm not saying that's a complete fail if they happen to, it's a fail if they don't win it this year, but I wouldn't count them out even for next year. They're still going to be at the top. But again, it gets harder. It doesn't get easier. And so this is theirs. It is there at the moment. It is theirs to give away. And they just have to continue to fight and play hard and play smart.
Yeah. I think another thing that I really enjoy in this game, and I'm always going to go back to, pretty much every time we mention the Aces against the Liberty, I'm going to mention every single time what Kelsey Plum said last year about the Liberty. The fact that they don't like each other, they're not really a team. Well, to be honest, this year, if you needed a proof, Kelsey, you could tell that the Liberty actually enjoy being with each other, that they're strong, they're unified, they love playing with each other, they want to fight for each other. And you just have to sort of look at what Sabrina and Stewie said after the game. I took notes of some of the quotes that they said after the game. When Sabrina was asked, Leonie Fibish, she said the ability to come out and shoot, pass the ball, defend. She guards the best wing defender every night. She's just always doing the right thing at the right time, and she doesn't think that it all shows up on the stat sheet. And then Brianna Stewart also said that her and Sab were actually excited to be back with the team, that they did their job in the Olympics, won the gold medal, and extended the streak. And then we were excited to be back. And we know that this second half of the season is really important, and there are no excuses. They could have made the excuses of be like, yeah, we're tired. Yeah, our biggest goal was the gold medal in the Olympics, and now we could just chill a little bit until the playoff. But no, they showed right away that they wanted to come out strong, but they also were excited to be back with their teammates, and that shows a lot, about the chemistry in this team, and that shows on the court. When you see like Kayla Foran and Phoebish fighting, to help the team. I feel very hopeful when I see that. And so, Kelsey, if you had any doubts, I don't think you're gonna listen to that podcast, but I think now the Liberty show you that they are a team, and you're gonna have to count on them this year.
I think also, the Liberty did something pretty remarkable last year for a team that was just put together. Usually when teams are just sort of constructed, it takes a couple years to gel and a couple years to kind of figure things out. They were able to get to the finals in the first year of this quote unquote super team that people wanted to call them and the Aces. That's pretty remarkable to still be able to manage that with new members on the team coming together, trying to make this work. And remember, JJ was injured the first part of the season, so she came in much later. Like, they did a lot last season, and so this season was just the time for them to really gel now, to really build on what they had last year. And I know it didn't end, and it left a bitter taste in their mouth to lose the championship on their home court. But I think that also drove everyone. That also lights a fire in people to know, like, we don't want this to happen again, and we're not going to let it happen again. And yeah, for the Liberty this year, they're definitely, the chemistry is there. They added new players, and they fit right in. I think, yes, there's still some tweaks. I know everybody is all hyped about Gabby Williams and other players overseas.
We'll talk about that at the end of the podcast.
We don't know that that's really going to happen. But either way, you still have Sherrod. You still have some players that are injecting energy and just that confidence, and just seeing them play is just a really great sign for the Liberty that they can go all the way with this particular team and this lineup. And yeah, props to Leonie Fibish, Kayla Thornton, Kennedy Burke. They're doing their thing. I mean, even Dojkic at times, I know sometimes it can be, there's still some tweaks there for her, but ultimately the people you have, and you can't forget about Benijah will be back soon.
That's the thing, we're winning those games without Benijah
Laney. And usually she's a core piece, and so you can't forget about her, because she's a core piece, and you need her for this run, especially into the playoffs. You're gonna need Benijah, and you're gonna need her defense and her scoring. So props to everyone just giving it their all right now, and for Stewie and Sav to just come back and they never left to really get these wins, because this next week is not going to get any easier, as they have kind of this West Coast trip with Phoenix, Seattle, and others in the mix, that it's going to be it's a tougher schedule.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to play pretty much every 2 days, so that's 3 games next week, 3 games, 3 away games the following week. I mean, this schedule, I was telling you before we started recording the podcast, it's probably the craziest schedule in the history of the WNBA. I mean, with the Olympics and more games into the season compared to the past, with 40 games now, it's absolutely insane. And then you only have 12 teams, and sometimes you have like so many games at the same time. You try to grow the game, but then how do you grow the game if all the games are at the same time? You could literally spread out the games throughout the week so that people get a chance to watch every single team. But then, you had teams like the Liberty, play Thursday and Saturday. Then you had teams like Chicago and Phoenix that play 3 games in 5 days. It's insane. So, it's gonna take a lot to win this title. And, talking about mental strength, I was, thinking earlier on today, after reading a couple of articles about the Liberty and what they went through, especially last year, and not to make any excuses because at the end of the day, the Aces were the better team last year. But you have to look back at what, they endure and, how they coming out now this year. I think a lot of people question the mental strength of this team and whether they have what it takes to win the title. But when you think about, there's a very good article on Sports Illustrated written by Greg Bishop that I read earlier today that was talking about, Stewie's journey around that time of the finals. And it's crazy when you think about it. Her father-in-law, so the father of a wife, who lived in Spain, was on the verge of dying. I think he had a cancer, and he had a close relationship with his daughter-in-law, and he passed away, after the first game of the final, and while also, Stewie's wife was in Spain with her father, and she was close to giving birth to the second child. So you have all those things going on. Not to make any excuses, but that's tough on anybody. You lose someone that is close to you. You're gonna have a second child. You play, the final against one of the best teams, in the history of this league. That's tough. And then you have Sloot that also, had a mother that was sick, and it's only later that we found out how bad it was. And then, you look at Sab and all the criticism that she got, saying that she a liability on defense, that she choked when it matters and stuff like that. And to see how they perform, I mean, Sloot could have had any reasons to not come back and just put an end to a season, but she wants to be there for her teammates and still fighting and try to, work for this team. And you see, Stewie, how much she had to work, mentally to come back after that season, and probably reminiscing on the last play of that game 4 where she could have taken the shot, but she decided to pass the ball, and it ended how we know it ended. So all those things, long story short, to say that the Liberty team has shown character, and I'm really impressed and in awe of what they've been able to accomplish this year. And I really, really hope that it will end well, or at least, going back to the final, because they really deserve it. I think, when you look at the work ethic, and how they play for each other, and for the fans, that we've been waiting for this title forever. I mean, I think it's one of the only original teams that hasn't won a title yet. So, New York has been waiting for this for a long time. 1973 is the last basketball title for the city of New York. So that's a very, very long time.
Very long time.
Knicks fans are waiting for that title since that 1973 title. So it's a long time coming, but I think, everybody's going in the same direction, and the fans are really behind the team, and I really hope that they could, put it off. So that was just the one thing that I wanted to share, because I read some of the stories. I think, as fans, we can easily criticize and write stuff online behind our desk. But we don't know what those athletes are going through in the journey that takes them there. So we always have to remember the human aspect of those players.
Yeah, you see all the things, you hear about it afterwards and what they're going through. So then, yeah, they don't want to give any excuses. They have to come out, they have to show up and play, and but yeah, those things will settle in. Those things, they play with you. They're in your head, like you're trying to block it out and just play with your team, but they're a part of you. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate that all of those things happened, and they still come out to play, which is really honorable. of them. I know they feel like, well, this is my job, but again, some people don't. Like, this could have taken people out, and it didn't do that. And they just kept pushing, they kept fighting. And I think this year you see a stronger team, you see a more cohesive team. Yes, there's still things to build on, but they're definitely together more than they were last year. And just, that connection between JJ and Sab, or Stewie and Sab, or now we're starting to see a little connection between JJ and Stewie. And, these things are they're just going to continue to build. This is just their second year all together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when you think about all these other teams who have won championships, at most recent, obviously, the Aces, it took them a few years to get to their championships. It took them a couple of years and a couple of awesome draft picks to get to where they are. So for the Liberty, they got to keep pushing. I feel like this is their year, and they can do it. They can go all the way and win this. I think they'll have battles, but they can overcome them for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier Jonquel Jones and how, sometimes she was getting frustrated, especially in the paint, because they were really crowding her as soon as she got the ball in the paint. And, she might not have had the usual flashy game. I mean, the last time they faced each other, she had 34 points, career high. And, we were sometimes a little frustrated, in terms of like her on offense, but you look back at the stat sheets at the end of the game, she had 10 points, 17 rebounds, and 7 assists. I think they said that the only players that have been able to have a performance like this with at least 10 points, 17 rebounds, and 7 assists were Lisa Leslie, Candace Parker, and I think there might have been another player in the mix. But when among that list of players, that means you've done something well. And you look at, the offensive rebounds. The Liberty won 13-2 the battle of the rebounds, offensive rebounds. And Jonquel was key. Sab said that it's a luxury to have a player like Jonquel that, if we miss our shots, and, the Liberty didn't shoot the ball particularly well in this game. But when you have Jonquel that can get all those rebounds and give you a second chance, that's gonna tremendously help. And having a center that can have 7 assists in a game, that's a luxury.
Her passing also, she had an incredible pass to Leonie Febish, where Febish made a 3, I believe, and just across court. And you're just like, how did she see and find her? But she did. And JJ also is crucial because, to get 17 rebounds, and Asia only got, I think, 11 rebounds. This game goes, you can pretty much tell a game too by the amount of rebounding that was going on. And the Liberty definitely did much better than the Aces on that front, because typically Asia, she's a monster under there, but with JJ, it made it much more difficult for her to get as many rebounds as she could have. And again, you also have Stewie under there as well. So JJ is also very much crucial, and they gotta also play for JJ. There were times they did, but she was getting like double and triple teamed at times. They converged on her and Stewie a lot, more so than anyone else. And so she just got to keep pushing, and she can't let, when they're not making the calls. And there were definitely a lot of complaints to the refs on both sides of the court of calls not being made, or feeling like the wrong call was made. And so everyone was sort of frustrated there, but she can't let that get into her head. She has to just continue to play her game and continue to be that aggressive force under there, because with JJ under there, it's pretty hard to compete against her.
Yeah, so in the end, we got the win. That's the second win this season against the Aces. We're gonna face them one final time. So the game was won 79-67. In case you were wondering about the score, but we're gonna face them one more time in September. And then after that, potentially in the playoff. If we look, so the Liberty are the first team to clinch the playoff. Not that, it was a big surprise or that we were worried about them not making the playoff. But that's, always, something that is good to have in the bag and just move forward. But as of now, they're top of the league with 23 wins and 4 losses. And if we had to look at, if the season ended right now, the first round of the playoff would be New York against Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And then potentially in the semifinal, it would be potentially the winner of, the Aces, who are fourth in the league right now, against the Seattle Storm, who are fifth. So, potentially the final of last year in the semifinal, while the other teams, the Connecticut, the Minnesota, and all those teams kind of battle on the other side. So, you're gonna have to beat the best. But like we said, we're feeling confident, hopefully, that they'll continue with this momentum. Now, before we finish with the podcast, you mentioned Gabby Williams, who's, my fellow Frenchman, and French woman.
Yeah.
Sorry. And she had an amazing Olympic tournament. One of the big, we all said that France on paper was probably the second best team, maybe with Belgium, but they had, the depth and the athleticism to maybe, match the U.S. I didn't think personally that they would give such a headache to the U.S. teams in the final, but one player that, really almost put off the biggest upset in the history of women's basketball, it was Gabby Williams.
Yeah.
What a tournament she had, offensively, defensively. I mean, obviously, people are familiar with her because she had a career in the WNBA with the Chicago Sky and the Seattle Storm. But the FIBA Gabby Williams is a different beast. I mean, she's been MVP of the EuroLeague. She won the EuroLeague. She won titles just everywhere she went to. Been to in Europe, whether it's in Prague and in France and Lyon. Now she's gonna play for Fenerbahce in Turkey. She's a high caliber player, and so recently it has been shared that teams that could potentially be in the mix to recruit her are the New York Liberty, the Phoenix Mercury, and the Seattle Storm, whom she played with before. And ESPN just shared today during the game between the Indiana Fever and the Seattle Storm that she will give an answer in a couple of days as to whether she decides to go back to the WNBA to finish the season or just gonna, take some rest, some, well-deserved rest before starting the season in Turkey. So, what do you think someone like Gabby Williams could bring to that team?
I'm just trying to figure out. I know she can take someone's spot for sure, but I was wondering who. I think we all kind of know where she could fit, but she also played with Stewie at UConn.
Yes,
so
and in Seattle as well.
And in Seattle, so they know each other very well. I think she would be an excellent fit because she's also one of the things, whether she starts or comes from the bench, one of the things that I notice, even with her playing and watching her play during the Olympics, is that aggression, just her basketball IQ. She's kind of like a Sabrina and KT in one, if that makes sense.
Yes, that's a very good comparison.
Because she may not be as great with the threes, but she can definitely shoot threes. She's
getting better though. She's getting better
with it. But she can drive, passing. I mean, just to watch her in other games, not just with the U.S., I was like, why is she not playing it? Why is she not in the W? I know the W doesn't pay as much as playing overseas, so.
I mean, there were many reasons. I think one of the reasons was also the fact that she wanted to be part of the French national team, and the French Federation had said that they didn't allow basically their players to go to the WNBA because they wanted them to stay with the national team to prepare for whether the Euro or the Olympics. So it's not like she had much choice. Like if she decided to play at the WNBA at the beginning of the season, then she would not make the team. That's what happened to Marine Johannes last year, and the reason why they didn't, take her into the team. And it was very unfair, but that's what they decided. So, and then the powers, I cannot never say that word.
Oh, you Frenchmen, prioritization rule.
Thank you very much. That also comes in play, because if she had signed a contract with a team and had to report to, training camp, because she has been in the league for a certain number of years, I don't think she would have been able to miss the start of training camp as a result. But now, because she's a free agent, that doesn't really comes into play for her. So she could sign with not any team, because it also depends on the cap space.
Yeah.
Because she's a veteran player, meaning she has at least 3 years of experience, teams have to pay her a certain amount.
Yeah.
And there's only a couple of teams that have enough cap space to give her the minimum that she's guaranteed. So that's a lot of complications. And it's a question of fit as well, and what she wants, and if she's mentally ready to jump in right away into end of the season plus playoff. Who knows? But I would love to, have Gabby Williams and the leadership into the team. That would mean that obviously one player will have to go. So as of now, Jalen Sherrod, who has been with the team for the past few weeks, just signed on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, or Friday, a third 7-day contract, which means that it's the last 7-day contract that the Liberty could offer her. Meaning that at the end of that 7-day contract, the Liberty will have to either, waive her or sign her for the rest of the season if they want to keep Sherrod. So my thinking is, do they do that? Do they keep Sherrod for the rest of the season? But then that means that you won't have any cap space for Gabby. So do you cut one of the other players, or do you just let Sherrod go and go all out for Gabby and hoping that she would want to sign with you? That's a lot of questions. And also, do you break the chemistry or try to, because right now everything is going so well, do you really want to add a new player in the mix? As great as she is, as fans, obviously, we're just excited of the possibility, but
she's an amazing player. But once you throw someone in there at this stage, you gotta see. I mean, I don't think she'll come right out the gates like she did, with France, but she's used to that team. Those are her teammates. She's used to that. She'll probably, if she were to come to New York, she would come from the bench and be inserted, see how she does. I do think if she were to come from the bench, as long as Stewie is on the floor, I think she'll be great. You got to see how she would blend with others, and that's a question mark. Like, she's a great basketball player, so I don't think it would be that difficult for her at all. It's just, it's the fit, but I think you have a big familiar face in Stewie on that team who knows her game, knows how she plays. But then you also have Seattle, where she used to play.
Yeah, and I think she has family there, so
and still loves Seattle. So I could totally see her, if she wanted to. She could easily go there as well, and that would give them what a boost.
They would definitely need it more probably than we do.
They would need it more than New York, and I think it would give them a huge boost if she came back.
Well, especially if you have watched the game between the Indiana Fever and Seattle. They would have really needed Gabby Williams in that game.
You could have used Gabby.
So who knows?
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I guess it'll be up to her if she wants to take a rest, which she had a huge Olympic
nobody would be mad at her if she decides to.
Yeah, she might just want to chill out until her season in Turkey starts. Also, she may want to see if she can contend for a title, and right now the Liberty #1, so we could use you, Gabby. But I totally get it. No one will be mad if she decides, like, I'm gonna stay.
But one thing for certain is that if she decides to sign with the Liberty, that Gabby Williams jersey is gonna be in my wardrobe the minute they have that jersey. I guarantee you.
Yeah, I mean, I do think if you're gonna have Gabby, I feel like they're gonna need to cut more than Sherrod, though. I mean, I know, like Sherrod's only taking so much.
No, but they said, from what I've seen on Twitter, they will have to wait until August 29th to have enough cap space to sign Gabby Williams.
Okay.
So we'll see. I mean, it's all gonna depend on her, really.
I'm sure Stewie had a conversation already. They took pictures and yeah, I'm sure
Joe
Stewie,
and Kyle Rusai were over there. So
they were all eyeing her like, who is that? And she almost
I'm sure they knew who she was already.
But also, who is that? Because it's her, but then you are being reintroduced because you haven't seen her on full display in the W.
My apologies, I wasn't familiar with your game.
Like she showed you, and with the one toe on the line, she could have sent this game to overtime, and that would have been a thriller. But it was tough. But she played her heart out for her country.
Yeah. So that's it for our podcast, guys. Anyway, it was great to be back after the Olympic break. So next week we'll cover the Liberty. They have 3 games next week. A doubleheader against the Dallas Wings, which is the only team so far we haven't faced this season. So they're gonna play them twice at home at the Barclays Center on Tuesday and Thursday, and then Saturday at home. The last matchup of the regular season against the Connecticut Sun. So an exciting week ahead. The Sabali sisters are going to face each other again. So it should be a pretty exciting week. Yep. But thank you so much, guys, for listening to our podcast and supporting us. We're really grateful that you take some time of your day to listen to us. And as we always say, Felicia,
let's go Liberty!